Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FIDE Grand Swiss, a tournament that is being held in the place in the world with the highest rate of the coronavirus at the moment. Per special exemption, the players are playing under lockdown rules. It's kind of like being in jail and playing chess. So I'm exaggerating. I just need to start the introduction with something kind of fun and exciting and something that would grab your attention. Now we are going to recap rounds 3 and 4. There is a link in the description to the website of the tournament if you want to look at the full standings. And by the way, my OBS has been lagging the first few seconds every now and then recently. So if this video had a lag in the beginning, I sincerely apologize. And yeah, so 5 epic games, nothing else to say. Here we go. We're going to kick things off with a battle between Alireza Firouzja. This is from the 3rd round of the tournament. And Alexander Predke. So we got the Wonder Kid, the guy who's going to be potentially challenging Magnus in the next few years, and Alexander Predke, who is just the guy who sacrificed the queen for an epic victory. They're clashing on the top board. We have Rui Lopez, which is very standard if you get, two 2700 level players. All mainline stuff. Rook e1, bishop e7, rook e1, b5. And then here is kind of the major tabia of what's going to happen and what's going to get played. But the most important thing here is black plays rook e8, bishop f8. So rerouting the bishop backwards. And the rook kind of supports the center. And then a couple moves later plays the move knight back to b8. So this is known as a Smyslov, Breyer, Zaitsev. You just combine 3 guys. Smyslov, one of the best Soviet players of all time. Breyer, who this whole knight b8 thing is based on, and Zaitsev, whose last name is literally Rabbit, sort of. Zayats is Rabbit. So there is so much complexity to this position. We are going to let the players guide us. So b3. Why is Alireza playing this move? Well, he wants to develop his bishop to b2 rather than routing his knight over here potentially and developing the bishop somewhere on this diagonal because it's going to be difficult. Of course, he is destabilizing this slightly. Predke continues with knight d7, which is why he played knight b8 in the first place. And now we have bishop to b2, rook to b8. So, rook b8 and rook b1 are 2 of the most fascinating moves I've ever seen. They are kind of flexible, non-committal moves that potentially anticipate the opening of the b file on both sides. That's like the only explanation. Otherwise, I really have no idea why either of these moves got played. And sometimes I sit here and I say stuff like that, and then I read the comments, and someone in the comments is like, "Well, I come here for expertise. I don't want you to say you don't know." All right, but I really I'm doing my best. It's an educated guess. At the same time, you really shouldn't treat this like a master class. I'm just kind of a dude in a hoodie with a camera. G6. Well, that's not complicated. Something is going to go to G7. You would think it's going to be the bishop, but it turns out that this knight has an idea to come here. But when you come here with no target, you go back to G7. So we have like an interesting thing going on. Both sides are figuring out exactly what they want. And finally, on move 20, we have our first capture. So Alireza realizes that his opponent has sort of coordinated his pieces in a strange way. In a way that's a little bit slow. So what is a move here that will develop an initiative for white? Very good. King h1. That's absolutely correct. No, it's c4. And the idea of this move is you open your dark squared bishop, and later on, you're going to play this move, which actually doesn't look possible, but it very much is. Like, for example, if black doesn't take that and you allow this, black is dead. Like, black just loses. Black has no space. This bishop is stupid. So Alireza gives him the c-pawn to win the e-pawn and to open the position. Here he plays a very nice move. He plays knight dc4, which just looks like you're going to lose this, but of course you're not. Rook takes d7, kaboom. And now black loses that bishop on b7. So a transformation occurs here where Alireza just has a clear advantage because of the activity of his pieces. But he needs to find a way forward. Queen c3 is a good start. h5 is played so that knight g4 doesn't come and you just lose the game. He trades rooks, and then he plays rook to e3. Maybe rook d3 is an idea, and then he plays queen behind the rook, and then he will play f4 and try to just dominate the d file. Queen d2, I think, was a little slow. Yeah, like the engine really wanted him to play b4 for a while. It also wanted him to play a4 at some point to kind of attack the integrity of black's queenside structure. But he waited a little long, and he allowed Predka to reroute the bishop this way and to make a nice little spatial advantage there with b5, c5. So Predka actually played a couple of good moves to get back into the game. But the game is not over, and so Alireza plays a4, still trying to attack that structure. And here Predka sacrificed the pawn. He sacrificed the pawn in order to get a little bit of activity. So right now, you see a position where black is a clean pawn down, 5-4, but the two bishops are very strong. The knight is a little clumsy because it's a little slow, and there's a passed pawn. So the players now are after move 40, so they get their bonus time, and now they're ready for the next phase of the game. Alireza forces a trade of rooks and is making Predka defend a position of knight and bishop versus two bishops. So we have f-pawn for d-pawn getting traded. Now, there might be some drawing chances. I mean, probably an engine draws this 10 times out of 10 against the human with black, but that doesn't really say much because engines can beat us nowadays with their hands tied behind their backs. So Predka plays g5. Alireza now spends the rest of this endgame finding a way to kind of push this all forward, because you're not going to checkmate the guy, but you got to push a pawn forward to win, right? So he brings his king all the way to the center. And, you know, if we got an endgame like this, there is a very high draw chance because opposite colored bishops, you know, as long as black doesn't lose these pawns and black also mirrors white with E and G, it's just simply a draw. However, if we get an endgame that looks like this with same colored bishops, this is a loss 10 times out of 10, which is very interesting because you can trade your bishop for the other bishop. You understand? You cannot make a blockade on the light squares because there's a light squared bishop. Whereas if you have a dark squared bishop with black, you create a blockade on the dark squares. So bishop c8, b4, knight c6, and b5. And Alireza is making good progress. I mean, he centralized this king. There might still be very vague drawing chances if you make this trade. I think that's what the engine was saying, but I think this is very tough. It's probably still losing. Maybe you had to do it earlier. By the time white makes all the progress in the position, it's most likely impossible to defend this. So Predka goes for counterplay on the other side of the board with his king. The problem is Alireza is just holding everything together. Everything is moving forward. And here, when he finally creates a little bit of counterplay. Now, remember, if you take this and g2 comes in, it might be a problem. Although you're still going to promote, which is kind of hilarious. Well, Alireza doesn't get involved in any of that. Instead, makes the queen, plays queen b2, which is a nice move. If you promote, there is this, and he wins. Alireza Firouzja started this tournament with 3 out of 3, although he drew in the 4th round with the black pieces against Yu Yangyi. He is almost number 4 in the world. He is 2 rating points away in classical chess from being the 4th highest rated player in the world. Higher rated than Ian Nepomniachtchi, who's playing for the World Championship. That's crazy. Okay, next game I'd like to show you. This was one of the most insane games I've ever seen in my life. Tari versus Fedoshev, Caro-Kann, and clearly Fedoshev, an owner of the Gotham Caro-Kann course. C5 here. Kind of a rarer move than bishop f5. DC, e6, a3. Main line. Takes, and now white can play b4 or knight f3, and then b4 or knight f3, bishop d3, and then b4 or knight f3, bishop d3, castles, and then b4 or knight f3, bishop d3, and not playing b4 at all. He goes for this one, though. Bishop back to b6. And after the players played a bunch of relatively normal-looking moves, here Tari played a move I haven't ever seen, which is b5. Now, you would think b5 is a pretty normal thing. You just attack the knight. The reason I don't understand this move is you can move the knight to actually any of those squares, but I think you can also take knight e5, queen f6, unless with this. Unless I did not remember this correctly. There's like f4, knight f4. You can't castle now. I mean, maybe not. Maybe you don't go for this with queen f3. Maybe you don't go for this. But you can move the knight to any square. And knight a5 is played. And now, Tari plays h4. Queen c7. h5. Knight f4. Bishop back to f1 to get the bishop out of the way. Here comes the other knight from the other side of the board. Knight on c4. Knight on f4. What the hell is going on? I mean, is white going to just undevelop all his pieces? Bishop to d4, check here, and now Fedosev's like, bro, what the hell are you doing, dude? You just let me put all my pieces forward, f6. Now you're in trouble. Because what are you going to do here? If you take, I'm going to play e5. e5. My knights defend my pawns. My bishop pressures. My queen defends. It doesn't matter about FG. I take with the queen. There's nothing there. So g3. Now we have an explosion. fe5. Knight e5. Knight e5. gf4. And Fedoseev slides out of there back to f7 with this under attack. Tari plays h6. Not slowing down and getting all the way to g7. The rook is hanging, so you have to move it out of the way. Bishop to e2 and bishop to d7. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I really like black's position because black is a move away from causing some serious trouble to the white pieces. 5 of them of which are on the home row. Rook h3. Here's e5, as promised. Queen gets kicked out. Rook f3. Are we sure about that? Well, if you take on g7, the d5 pawn hangs, as well as rook g3, and then queen d5. So he plays queen e6 to defend all this. And now Tari plays queen a4. Attacking the bishop. Now it's not complicated. You move the bishop out of the way. If takes, then queen takes, obviously. Rook g3. Takes. And here, Fedoseev has his biggest advantage of the game. Because he is stable in the center, good development, and just needs a couple more moves to jump into the white position and destroy everything. He plays queen h6. Attacking g7, threatening queen h1, threatening queen h4, potentially. Potentially. Not right now. I actually just kind of lazily drew this arrow. Let's put it this way. This is not a move right now, but if this queen moves somewhere, then queen h4 is very much a problem. But don't hang your queen in one move. Don't be like me. Knight d2. Knight d6. Looking for knight f5. Looking for... That's obviously not what I meant to draw. One of these two squares. Knight f5 at least would defend that. Castles. Queen h2 is a fork, but here comes counterplay. Rook g5. You cannot take on e2 because then I take on e5 and somehow it's not so clear what the hell is going on. Now, keep that in mind because that actually happens. Fedoseev takes the bishop. Tari now takes on e5 with check. The only move here for black is king d8, and now queen d6 is just hanging. But here Fedoseev has rook takes c3 check. King b2. Now the queen and the rook team up and are just ready to just destroy everything over here. Luckily, the queen defends the pawn for now. The only move here that doesn't lose for white is knight b1. And now queen c2 check played. Here the engine gave this, and a draw after rook e6. The threat of rook e6, let's say black plays rook c1 to attack this knight, sacking the queen. Boom, 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 check. Draw. But of course that doesn't happen. Queen c2, king a1, queen takes d1. It happens in a different way. The rook is on c2 in one variation and c3 on the other. So, in this position, we get rook e7. And now, after mate is stopped, queen f6. Threatening the rook, threatening discovered check to win the queen, and threatening queen f8. Rook c4. And now, for reasons that I cannot describe to you, I do not know, Tari did not go for the win of the queen. He did not play rook to e4. I don't know why he didn't play this move. Maybe he did not think that he had sufficient play in this position to win the game. Maybe he missed just how strong his position was after something like knight c3, knight d5. But Tari played b6 first, I guess assuming that the queen was not going anywhere. But now queen g6. And even though there is queen f8, Fedoseev plays bishop e8. What the hell is going on? You cannot take anything, because this is hanging if you take the rook. Rook he takes this way. But now, rook a4. And the pawn is stopped. The exchange, the rook down position is a real problem here for white. And white plays rook takes b7. Threatening queen e7, queen c7, among other things. Rook b8, a8. I mean, it's like terrible, but there's only one move in this position to save black. And it's this. And if you take like this, you are just a rook down. And if you take like this, you get your rook back. But black is just in time to disconnect your rook and block like this. And so here the players traded all their pieces and agreed to a draw. I'm out of breath just talking about this game. Completely insane game. I mean, wow. Next game I'd like to show you is a game between Jansaia Abdulmalik and Natalia Buksa. This is from the women's side. In the last recap, I said men's side and women's side. It's not quite that. It traditionally, one side has all men and one side has all women. It's more like women's side and open side. There is the only woman competing on the open side is Alexandra Goryachkina. This game was completely off the rails as well. It begins with a closed Sicilian Rossolimo. And then after rook e1, e5, here Jansaia plays b4. This is how you know we're in for a treat. You delay black's development with a flank pawn sacrifice. Black has to oblige to take, either with knight or pawn. And now you launch a crazy initiative. a3, takes bishop, takes knight, takes rook, d6. Now here, black could for a moment be 2 pawns up with isolated triple pawns, but that just looks really stupid. So, d6, takes on c5, knight e7 trying to get quick development, queen to e2 attacking the b5 pawn. The b pawn moves forward, queen c4 looking to win the pawn, queen a5 attacking the bishop on a1, cd6 giving up the bishop on a1, but there is a knight hanging, and a bishop hanging if that knight hangs. Knight c6. Now you need to not take your foot off the gas. d4, sacrificing the bishop on a1 in the corner. It gets taken. d5, full steam ahead. Knight goes back to a7, queen c7 in the middle of the game, just threatening mate in 1. That's just straight up mate. You could castle out of the way, you can defend it, but d7 is coming. Black decides to play bishop to d7, allowing white to take this pawn on b7, but now you cannot castle anymore because you lose the bishop, and these pawns are just simply promoting. So, that's not the move that was played, that was a misclick. Knight c8 back. Queen b4. Jansaia is scooping up all the pawns that she could get. The material is completely equal because white has 7 pawns and black has 4. 7 minus 4, 3. Bishop is worth 3. Very good. Now queen a6, c4. Here it comes. You could take my d6 pawn, but I'm going to play c5. And the thing is, if you don't take my d6 pawn, then I'm still going to play c5 and I'm still going to have a d6 pawn. So you take up the d6. I play c5. Now, if you move the knight back to where it was, which is exactly what happens in the game, c6. Oh, bishop g4. Very interesting. You could take it. I'm cool. Queen b7. What? Look at this move. If takes, you cannot stop a queen. You can't stop both moves. You can't stop takes or push. You can stop one. You can't stop the other. Actually, you can't stop push. You could stop takes. You can't stop push. So, queen a7 played by Buksa, allowing this. The king comes up. Now the queen's got to go. She offers the queen trade. She offers another queen trade because the bishop is trapped. It cannot move anywhere. By the way, she's done all this without moving this knight. This knight just hasn't played at all. Takes, rook b8, and now she has to win this endgame, which is not easy. It's a 4-on-4. The only benefit white has is a really dominant d-pawn. Rook a1. f5, trying to immediately kind of deal with these problems. It's a big weakening move, though, because you weaken all the squares over here. Jansaia plays rook a6. King d7. And now knight c4. Here h4 is very strong, which is a nice move to try to kind of attack the integrity of black structure. Also shows you the problem of overextending your pawns. You see, in an endgame like this, white needs to come to you. So oftentimes overextending is dangerous because you know white is going to arrive anyway. And if you overextend, you've already weakened your structure. Very difficult to just sit and do nothing, though, and just play defense. So knight c4 played, and now it takes on f5. And knight d6. And this is really the problem. It's not even the rook that has to arrive to attack the king. The knight attacks everything. Jansaia picks up a pawn. And at some point, her king will make the march. But first, she picks up both pawns. And I mean, she really made this game just kind of look like effortless. I mean, she managed the fire of the position really nicely. The rest of the game is kind of a matter of technique, which is a fancy way of saying she didn't lose any of her pieces. And even though she gave up a pawn, she won one back. She maintained the 2-pawn advantage. All the pieces march forward together. Completely insane game, but a very, very nice one. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the hell this... I mean, all this stuff was just totally insane. I don't know where her prep ended, but these kinds of games are fun to play. And then once you kind of fizzle everything out into a practically better endgame, she converted it very nicely. The engine here wanted to just play knight d2 and not even go into an endgame, just have those pawns. But it's a little bit tricky to do that, because if you make a mistake, like let's say you just don't play fast enough and you allow black to blockade your pawns, you will probably lose this game. But maybe not. Maybe I would lose it. I shouldn't speak for the other players. So a nice win by Zhansaya. This game, Timur Kuibokarov is not really a name that you would associate with the country of Australia. I cannot imagine a guy named Timur Kuibokarov saying, "Oh, I might." I don't know if that was a good Australian accent. Also just completely stereotyped all of Australia. I apologize. But I guess Timur's family moved to Australia. There's also another player there, Anton Smirnov. There's a lot of Russian-sounding names over there in Australia. Versus Nihal Sarin from India. Now, this one, Arul Lopez. However, Nihal plays this move, which I've almost never seen. I mean, there is a variation known as like the Arkhangelsk, which is like b5 here in bishop c5, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it's bishop c5 now, but you play like this and this. This is known as the Arkhangelsk. But he plays this and then knight e7, which is... I've never seen this shit, dude. Like, I've never seen that. It looks suspicious because White's entire idea is to play d4. Well, now it seems even stronger because you get hit with tempo. But the whole point is that at some point you play d5, because if you don't play d5, White plays d5 and black is just lost. So d5, I mean, lost at this level, not at your level. Don't worry about it. So we get a position which, you know, White does look to be better, for sure. Dominant pawn that can kind of march forward. The hell is the queen doing here? Knight is a little offside. But the way you would push this advantage is you would play this move. And black might castle out of the way, and you would just, you would literally just go for this. You would go for this damage structure. To be completely honest with you, I don't really know why White didn't go for this. Maybe there's something better than knight after knight e8, like maybe rook d8 with quick counterplay here. I don't really know. I'm just a spectator. Instead of this, White played a move which also damaged black's structure, but not in the same way. Knight f3 and forced black to move the queen, because if black plays queen f6, I believe there's just knight d5, I guess this. I didn't know if this was completely winning, but I don't know. Nihal does not go for queen f6. He plays this move, which is crazy. Just voluntarily splitting his pawns like that. I mean, my God. Bishop c2. So now the idea, obviously, to move both rooks into the middle of the board. Rook d8, bishop e4, rook d6. So he has ideas to double. At some point, one of the pieces will go to d5 or f5. And here Timur goes for knight c5. Attacking this. Maybe rook c1 stuff. b6, preventing that. Rook c1, rook d8. And now Nihal just plays king g7, just improving his position. b3, rook d7. Enabling the movement of this knight. Otherwise, c7 was just hanging. Bishop back to d3. a5, not complicated. Rook c3. And here Nihal was like, wait, why can't I just take this? Knight e5 attacks my rook, right? And if I move it, then rook c7. But I've watched enough Gotham content that I know that when my rook is hanging, I can just counterattack his rook. And if his rook moves out of the way, then I just slide over. Just a blunder. Just a one mover there. All the pieces tangled up. Now the rook has an available square on e7, and Nihal's just a clean pawn up. And not only that, another haymaker. Bishop takes h3. Kaboom! If you take, you lose this knight, and this is protected. So Nihal just makes out like a bandit, and all his pieces come in, and he ends it off in style. He never backs up. Bishop takes g2 looks like one of those moves you play on chess.com, like, it's checkmate, but then the time is still running. You're like, and then they take your bishop. Except Nihal calculated all this. Rook e4. Oh! Oh, you can't stop any of that, actually, if you take. Just rook h4, mate in 1. And actually, Timur, like a good sport, I believe, played into it. I believe he played into it. I believe he actually played into the checkmate, because he was like, God damn, nice game. I swear only these 2650s like Nihal can play like bishop c5, knight e7. I mean, this dude just beat a 2550 rated GM like it was nothing. I mean, like it was breakfast. It's crazy how talented some of these players are. They get away with bishop c5, knight e7. Crazy stuff. Nihal just makes it look so easy sometimes. He should be very, very, very pleased with this game. And the last game that I would like to show you is the game between Manuel Petrosian from Armenia and David Anton Guijarro from Spain. This one was already knight f3, d5, but white plays e3. This setup is kind of a way to play like against the d5 pawn without actually committing a pawn to d4. Leads to some very interesting positions like this. Just kind of a fianchetto on b2, delaying d4. And actually in this game, white chooses a very unorthodox setup and goes for a second fianchetto. Like, I mean, this is a sign of a player that has absolutely zero interest in playing theory. Zero, like no interest. I'm gonna show up and play double fianchetto. And that's the thing when you play with white. I mean, you can kind of do whatever the hell you want sometimes. And you can still be in an interesting and imbalanced game. So, knight c6, and black is about to play d4. So white takes on d5. And now, if you play d4, it's actually not good at all because knight a4. So both pawns hang. So you just are gonna be in trouble here. So Guijarro plays b5, which prevents the knight from coming to a4. And maybe he will play bishop b7. So now an interesting maneuver. Not. A3 is not an interesting maneuver. Knight e2. Kind of still no d4 played. And this bishop is strong, so the knight is coming to f4. This is just a game. You plug this into an engine, literally the top 10 lines of the engine are 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. This is just nothing. There's nothing going on, but there's so much play. It's 0, 0, 0 because there's a lot of flexibility on both sides. Rook c8, knight f4. So the threat is to take and take. Now, the problem with all this is that at some point, black is going to get to play d4. And that was exactly when black plays d4. And here, Petrosian played a move that is so confusing. b4. Okay, so you could take this, or this in basically any order. Like, in the game, he took on b4, but you can take on e3. Then white can take this way or this way. And then you need to calculate, do you take here or here, and then white takes this way, or do you play c4, and then white plays a whole bunch of moves, and then once you're done calculating all that, you have to calculate whether what white takes with a d-pawn, and whether you take this way, and then what does white do, or whether this, or whether push, or none of those moves. So there's so much to calculate. Instead of that, Guijarro takes on b4. Now, that move seemingly forces white's next move, because if you take on d4 here, you allow ba3, and I don't think you can allow 3 passed pawns to just hang around. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. So a b4, and now he takes on e3. fe3 is played because in the future, Petrosian wants to open up the f file. Well, not in the future, but like, he already kind of opened the f file. He just moved his knights. And here, the best move for black is actually not to take the free pawn yet, but first to take the knight. Bishop takes f4. And gf4, knight takes b4. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't really know what Guijarro did not like about this position. Maybe rook takes c8, and he didn't like the fact that after bishop c8, knight e5 is kind of strong with potential counterplay like on all edges of the board. Maybe queen c8 takes the eye off the d3 square, so something like this, or, oh, that's a mouse slip, maybe take, like he didn't like something coming under fire of his structure. He decided not to do that and decided to just take on b4 right away. The problem with doing it this way is that now there is one move in this position that creates an attack on the black position. Can you find it? If you said bishop takes f6, you should be slapped. That's not an attack, that's just the capture of a piece. There's a move here, knight to g5. That move is basically the knight arriving at the castle, at the castle's doors, a loud announcement on the trumpet, or an iPhone, because it's 2021, I don't know who the hell is riding on horseback anymore, and saying, "Excuse me, we wish to launch a devastating attack upon your king. What are you going to do about it, biatch?" If you was watching the last recap, you know that's a chess term. Now, logically, you just kick the knight out. The problem with this is that if you do this, the knight just jumps directly into your castle. And that's a problem, because king f7, there is all sorts of queen b3s, or queen h5s. You have to take the knight first. But you're in trouble. Because king f6, yeah, no. That's why we open the f-file. Queen f6, check. If g6, knight g6, yeah, no. That's why we open the f-file. And if king f8, yeah, no. And king g8, yeah, no. So, yeah, no. None of that works. So, you have to play a move that seemingly stops knight takes f7. You actually here should take this. That's apparently the way you defend against taking on f7, by not defending on taking on f7 at all, and instead just kind of gluing your position together. Your knights hold everything. Yeah, no. But he plays queen e7. And he completely misses white's idea. He did not miss the next move. Knight h5. He did not miss the next move because he thought for 8 minutes and then played bishop e5 here in about 10 seconds. If knight takes h5, of course there is queen h5, rook f7. Everything is bad. But he plays this with the intention of trading off this bishop. And if you play d4, well, then you blocked out your own bishop, so you have less attack now. White to play and win, folks. White to play and win. Come on, you can do it. Play the stupidest looking move that doesn't blunder anything. It's probably the right answer. Queen b1. Queen b1. Queen b1, queen b1, make a move that makes no sense. Except if you played this move, I would report you for cheating. Manuel Petrosian, on the other hand, is a 2600 GM. Look at that move. There are 3 ideas behind this move. One is to win this knight once you take this bishop, because the queen would stop defending it and you would deal with this. The other is to play knight f6 and queen h7. And the other is that, yeah, well, there is no other thing. Bishop takes b2, knight takes f6 check. And the only move, otherwise you get mated, is to sack your queen. Takes, boom, boom. Now, even though white is completely winning, it's a rook and a bishop for a queen. So how do you win this? Queen h5 threatens mate in 1. Shockingly, black does not blunder that. But now you need to take one of the bishops. Which bishop is better to take? Which bishop is better to take? Which bishop is better to take? The dark squared bishop. Why? Because, remember, even in opposite colored bishop situations, when, first of all, you're damaging your opponent's structure, number 1. Number 2, if you allowed your opponent, the dark squared bishop, to survive, then there's a much higher chance they can actually coordinate their pieces, and your light squared bishop can't do anything about it. Whereas, if you both have a light squared bishop, and your queen is trying to create a winning advantage against a rook and a knight, your light squared bishops nullify each other. If you keep opposite colored bishops on the board, black basically has 3 pieces to combat your queen. Bet you didn't know that! Yes, and now your light squared bishop can be used with the queen. And by the way, look at this. In the middle of all this, you don't gotta go win any pawns. h4, h5, h6. And do you think that that pawn becomes a queen? Well, you bet your damn life that pawn becomes a queen. Yes, it does. And all Petrosian has to do is not hang mate. Where do you move your king? Very good. Yes, blunder checkmate while up 2 queens. Congratulations. Good job. No, king f4. Now where do you move your king? Just kidding. Only move. Now where do you move your king? Where do you move your king? Very good. You got to move it directly into the middle and go hide over here. And in this position, David Anton resigned. Completely crazy game. After 4 rounds of the FIDE Grand Swiss, Alireza Firouzja is up top with 3.5 points out of 4. Absolute beast. 2 rating points away from being top 5 in the number 4 in the world. Yeah, he is on fire. What a strong player. That's all I got for you. That's all I got for you. I will see you for the next few rounds. Until then, get out of here.